My son told his investors I was too damaged to attend Christmas dinner. 3 hours later, I was on the phone with CNN. Let me back up. My name is Tom Richardson. I'm 59 years old, a master sergeant who served 2 tours in Iraq. I've got a Purple Heart sitting in a shadow box on my kitchen table and a titanium plate in my left leg from an IED that nearly killed me in 2005. I also have a son named Marcus who runs a tech startup in Palo Alto. Or rather, he used to run one worth $2.8 million. You see, there's something about military families that civilians don't understand. When we say leave no man behind, it doesn't stop when you come home. It especially doesn't stop when that man is your father. Marcus forgot that lesson on December 18th. What I did next reminded him why Purple Hearts aren't just sold, they're earned. Hit subscribe if you believe military sacrifice deserves respect. The story really starts 8 years ago, when I made the biggest financial decision of my life. Marcus had just graduated from Stanford with his MBA, $180,000 in tuition that I'd helped cover with $45,000 from my disability payments. He had this idea for a startup, something about logistics software for small businesses. Smart kid, always was. But smart doesn't pay for office space in Silicon Valley. Smart doesn't buy the servers and equipment you need to compete with the big boys. Marcus needed money, real money, and banks don't exactly line up to fund unproven 23-year-olds with big dreams and bigger debt. That's when I made my choice. Let me tell you about my disability compensation. After the IED incident in Fallujah, March 15th, 2005, if you want the exact date, I was medically retired with a 70% disability rating. Shrapnel tore through my left leg, damaged the nerves, required 3 surgeries and $47,000 in medical bills that the VA eventually covered. The disability payments? $4,750 a month, every month. For 8 years, that money came in like clockwork. $380,000 total. I gave every penny to Marcus. But that wasn't enough. Marcus needed more for his equipment financing, his office lease, his hiring plans. The bank wanted collateral, wanted guarantees, wanted someone with good credit to co-sign a $450,000 business loan. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I sold my Purple Heart. Now, before you judge me, understand what that medal meant. I earned it lying in a hospital bed in Germany, wondering if I'd ever walk again. It represented 2 tours, 24 months away from home, and a moment when I chose to pull a wounded Marine to safety instead of taking cover. The shrapnel that put me in that hospital? I got it dragging Corporal Jamie Martinez behind a concrete barrier while insurgents lit up our position. The Purple Heart wasn't just a medal. It was proof that I'd bled for something bigger than myself. I sold it to a collector for $15,000. Marcus cried when I told him. Real tears, the kind I hadn't seen since he was 12, and broke his arm falling off his bike. Dad, I can't let you do this, he said. This is your legacy. No, son, I told him. You're my legacy. This is just metal and ribbon. The startup took off. Marcus was brilliant. I'll give him that. His logistics platform caught the attention of some major players. Within 3 years, he was pulling in contracts worth hundreds of thousands. By year 5, the big tech companies were circling like sharks, wanting to acquire his technology. Last month, Marcus got an offer, $2.8 million for his company. His share, after investors and employees, would be about $1.6 million, enough to set him up for life. I was proud, genuinely proud. My boy had made it in a world I didn't understand, using money I'd earned bleeding in a desert halfway around the world. Then December 18th happened. I live in a 650 square foot apartment in Redwood City, $1,200 a month, which is what passes for affordable housing when you're a disabled veteran in the Bay Area. My walls are decorated with military photos, commendation letters, and an empty shadow box where my Purple Heart used to sit. I'd been planning Christmas dinner for weeks. Nothing fancy. I'm not much of a cook, but I'd bought a small turkey, some stuffing mix, cranberry sauce, the kind of simple meal we used to have when Marcus was growing up and money was tight. I called him on the 18th to confirm timing. What time should I come over on Christmas Eve? I asked. There was a pause, a long pause. I could hear voices in the background, the kind of professional chatter you get in startup offices. Dad, Marcus said, and his voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to deliver bad news. We weren't expecting you for Christmas. What do you mean? We talked about this last month. Another pause. Then I heard him speak to someone else, his voice slightly muffled like he'd partially covered the phone. It's my dad. You know, the one I told you about? My stomach dropped. Marcus, who are you talking to? The team's here, Dad. We're working on the acquisition paperwork. Look, this is a big deal for us. Catherine's family is coming down from Seattle, and her parents are, well, they're different from what you're used to. Maybe we can do something in January? Different from what I'm used to. Catherine, his fiancée, came from old tech money. Her father founded a software company in the 90s and sold it for hundreds of millions. The kind of people who summered in Martha's Vineyard and thought a Purple Heart was something you bought at an army surplus store. Son, I've been planning this dinner for... Dad, his voice got sharper. I could hear him moving, probably walking to a quieter area. You know how you get sometimes. The nightmares. The episodes. Catherine's family isn't used to that kind of thing. PTSD makes people uncomfortable. The line went quiet. Not just quiet, dead silent. Because everyone in that startup office had just heard my son describe his Purple Heart father as damaged goods. That's when I heard the laughter. Soft, professional laughter, but laughter nonetheless. The kind privileged people make when discussing the embarrassing relatives of their business partners. You won't believe what I did next. What Marcus didn't know is that I'd been recording our phone calls for 6 months. Old military habit. In Iraq, we documented everything, radio chatter, briefings, debriefings. Cover your ass, we called it. When you're dealing with life and death decisions, you want proof of what was said and when it was said. Marcus had been acting strange since the acquisition talks started. Shorter calls, fewer visits, always some excuse about being busy with investor presentations and due diligence meetings. I started recording because something felt off. A father's instinct, maybe. I'm glad I did. Marcus, I said, keeping my voice level, put me on speaker. Dad, that's not... Put me on speaker, son. If my PTSD is something your team needs to know about, let's discuss it openly. I heard him sigh, then the hollow echo that means speakerphone. Okay, Dad, you're on speaker. Good. Now, who exactly am I talking to? A pause. Then Marcus, his voice tight with embarrassment. This is my development team. We're going over the final acquisition details. Excellent. Gentlemen and ladies, if any are present, my name is Master Sergeant Tom Richardson, United States Army retired. I served 2 tours in Iraq and earned a Purple Heart in Fallujah. I'm also the man who funded your company. Silence. Complete silence. Marcus, I continued, remind everyone how much of your startup came from my disability compensation. Dad, please. $380,000, Marcus, plus $15,000 from selling my Purple Heart. That's $395,000 of veterans' blood money that built your little tech empire. I could hear someone whisper, holy shit. Now, Marcus, explain to your team why my PTSD makes people uncomfortable. Dad, you don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly. You're ashamed of your father. You're ashamed that your seed funding came from a disabled veteran living in a $1,200 apartment. You're ashamed that while your fiancé's daddy was getting rich selling software, your daddy was getting shot at in Fallujah. The silence stretched on. I could picture Marcus standing there, face red, his carefully crafted professional image crumbling in real time. Here's what I understand about your situation, son. You've got 48 hours to close this acquisition deal. You've got investors breathing down your neck. You've got a $450,000 equipment loan that needs servicing, and you've got a father who co-signed that loan. I heard a woman's voice ask, co-signed what loan? Oh, Marcus didn't mention that? I'm on the paperwork for your equipment financing. Servers, development hardware, office furniture, all of it purchased with a loan that has my name right next to his. Now there was panic in the background chatter. I could hear papers rustling, someone typing frantically. Dad, Marcus said, his voice cracking slightly, what are you saying? I'm saying that disabled veterans might make people uncomfortable, son, but bankruptcy makes investors really uncomfortable. I let that sink in for about 10 seconds. 10 seconds of dead silence while a room full of Stanford graduates tried to process what they'd just heard. You know what, Marcus? You're right. You weren't expecting me for Christmas, but then again, you probably weren't expecting this call either. Dad, wait. Copy that, son. Richardson out. I hung up. For the next 30 minutes, my phone rang continuously. Marcus, over and over. I let every call go to voicemail. Finally, I listened to the messages. Message 1. Dad, please call me back. We can work this out. Message 2. Dad, the team is freaking out about the loan. Can we please talk? Message 3. Dad, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Please don't do anything crazy. Message 4, and this one was interesting. Mr. Richardson, this is Bradley Chen from Marcus's legal team. We need to discuss the equipment loan immediately. Please call me at... I deleted that one without listening to the number. Message 5. Dad, Catherine says her parents would love to meet you. We can do Christmas dinner, just like you wanted. Please, just call me back. Too late, son. Way too late. I walked over to my kitchen table where that empty shadow box sat next to a stack of financial documents I'd been keeping for exactly this moment. Bank statements showing every disability payment that went to Marcus. The receipt from selling my Purple Heart. The loan documents with both our signatures. But the most important document was sitting on top of the pile. A business card for Sarah Chen, military correspondent for CNN. I'd met Sarah at a Veterans Day event last year. She'd given me her card and said, if you ever have a story about how we treat our veterans, call me. I picked up the phone and dialed. Sarah, this is Tom Richardson. We met at the VA event in San Jose. You said to call if I had a story about veteran treatment. Of course, Tom. What's going on? How would you like an exclusive about a Purple Heart recipient whose son just told a room full of investors that his father's PTSD makes people uncomfortable? There was a pause. Then, I'm listening. It gets better. The son built his company with his father's disability money and is about to close a $2.8 million deal. How soon can you be here? I smiled for the first time in hours. How soon do you need me? After I hung up with Sarah Chen, I sat in my kitchen for exactly 7 minutes. Not 6, not 8, 7. In the military, we learned to take pause before making irreversible decisions. 7 minutes to think through consequences, alternatives, and points of no return. Marcus was my only child. His mother, Patricia, died when he was 16. Cancer took her fast and cruel. For the last 15 years, it had been just him and me. Every birthday, every graduation, every milestone we'd faced together. But respect isn't inherited. It's earned daily. I opened my laptop, a 5-year-old Dell that Marcus had bought me for Christmas, back when he still acknowledged where his money came from. I pulled up the loan documents from First National Business Credit. $450,000 in equipment financing signed 18 months ago. Marcus Richardson, primary borrower. Thomas Richardson, guarantor. The terms were crystal clear. Either party could demand immediate payment with 72 hours' notice if they felt the loan was at risk. As guarantor, I had that right. I also had something else. Marcus's business credit depended entirely on that loan staying current. Miss one payment, and his credit rating would crater. Miss one payment during an acquisition, and the deal would evaporate faster than morning fog in July. I picked up the phone and called First National. Business Credit Department, this is Jennifer speaking. Jennifer, this is Thomas Richardson. I'm the guarantor on loan number. I read the number from the document, and I need to exercise my right to call the loan. Sir, can you verify your social security number and the primary borrower's name? I gave her the information. Mr. Richardson, I see the loan here. The next payment isn't due until January 15th. Is there a specific reason you're calling the loan? Business relationship with the primary borrower has deteriorated. I no longer feel confident in his ability to service the debt. I understand. Sir, calling this loan means the full balance $427,862 becomes due in 72 hours. Are you certain you want to proceed? $427,000. Marcus would have to liquidate everything to cover that, assuming he could even find the cash. More likely, the equipment would get repossessed, the business would collapse, and the acquisition would disappear. I'm certain. I'll process the demand notice immediately. The borrower will receive notification within 2 hours. Thank you, Jennifer. I hung up and immediately called my bank. Marcus had been transferring money back to me sporadically over the past year. 500 here, 1,000 there. Guilt payments, I'd called them, but I wanted to make sure my own finances were bulletproof before this war began. Mr. Richardson, your current balance is $8,412, the automated system told me. Not much, but enough to hire a lawyer if Marcus tried to get creative. Next, I called the property management company that handled Marcus's office lease. I didn't have any leverage there, but I wanted information. Pacific Commercial Properties, this is Amanda. Amanda, this is Tom Richardson. My son Marcus leases space in your Palo Alto building. I'm trying to reach him about a family emergency, but his phone seems to be off. Could you tell me if he's in the office? Let me check. Yes, Mr. Richardson, I can see lights in Suite 340. Would you like me to transfer you to his direct line? No, thank you. I'll try him again later. So he was still there, probably in crisis mode, trying to figure out how to handle the loan situation. Good. Let him sweat. I pulled out a yellow legal pad, old school, but sometimes the best tools are the simplest, and started making a list. Evidence I possessed, complete financial records of all payments to Marcus, recording of today's phone call, Purple Heart sale receipt, co-signed loan documents, military service records, medical records from Iraq, injuries, media contacts, Sarah Chen, CNN, Mike Torres, Stars and Stripes. Local news stations, 3 numbers from my Veterans Day contacts. Timeline, loan called, 72-hour deadline starts now, CNN interview, scheduled for tomorrow morning, acquisition deadline, 48 hours from now. The math was simple. Marcus had 48 hours to close his deal and 72 hours to come up with $427,000. But he couldn't close the deal without the equipment that secured the loan, and he couldn't keep the equipment without paying the loan. Checkmate in 2 moves. My phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus. Dad, we need to talk. Urgent. I typed back. Busy until after Christmas. You understand, I have episodes. Then I turned the phone off. I had a CNN interview to prepare for, and 24 hours to make sure Marcus understood exactly what happened when you bite the hand that feeds you, especially when that hand earned a Purple Heart. By 6 a.m. the next morning, Marcus had left 14 voicemails. I listened to every one over coffee while watching the sunrise through my apartment window. The progression was fascinating. Message 1 was anger. Dad, what the hell are you doing? You can't just destroy my company because you're upset about Christmas dinner. By message 7, it was panic. Dad, the bank says I have 72 hours to pay off the loan. That's impossible. Please call me. Message 14 was pure desperation. Dad, I'm begging you. I'll do anything. Christmas dinner, Easter, every holiday. I'll buy you a house. Please don't do this. I deleted them all and drove to the CNN studio in San Francisco. Sarah Chen met me in the lobby at 8 a.m. sharp. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of focused energy that good reporters have. She handed me a coffee and led me to a small interview room. Tom, before we start recording, I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with here. Your son built a business using your disability compensation? I pulled out my folder of documents. $380,000 over 8 years, plus $15,000 from selling my Purple Heart. I showed her the bank statements, each monthly transfer highlighted in yellow. Every penny of my disability went to Marcus. She flipped through the statements, her expression growing more serious with each page. And he said your PTSD makes people uncomfortable? He said it in front of his entire development team. I have the recording. Her eyes widened. You recorded the conversation? Military habit. Would you like to hear it? For the next 20 minutes, Sarah Chen listened to my son dismiss his Purple Heart father as damaged goods. I watched her face change as the recording played first shock, then anger, then the kind of cold professional focus that told me this story was going national. Tom, this is explosive. But I need to ask, are you sure you want to do this? Once this story airs, there's no taking it back. I thought about Marcus as a kid, the way he'd beam with pride when I'd wear my dress uniform to his school events. I thought about the night I told him I was selling my Purple Heart, how he'd cried and said I was the best father in the world. Then I thought about yesterday's phone call. I'm sure. The interview took 2 hours. Sarah was thorough, professional, and fair. She asked hard questions. Wasn't this essentially a family loan? Don't you bear some responsibility for not setting clear boundaries? I answered honestly. Maybe I spoiled him. Maybe I should have made him sign formal loan documents. but disrespect isn't something you can fix with better paperwork. We wrapped up at 11 a.m. Sarah said the story would air on the evening news and be online by noon. One more thing, she said as I was leaving. I reached out to Stars and Stripes about this. They want to do a follow-up piece on veteran family dynamics. Are you okay with that? Absolutely. I drove home and turned my phone back on. 23 missed calls from Marcus, 6 from unknown numbers that were probably his lawyers and business partners. At 12:47 p.m., my phone rang. Marcus. Dad, please tell me you didn't just do a CNN interview. I did. Dad, you're destroying everything I've worked for. No, son, I'm teaching you about the cost of dishonor. This isn't about honor. This is about you being petty because you didn't get invited to Christmas dinner. I let that hang in the air for a moment. Marcus, let me ask you something. When you sold your first contract for $50,000, who did you call? You, but when you hired your first employee, who did you tell first? Dad, that's not the point. When Stanford Business Review wrote that article about young entrepreneurs, who did you thank in the interview? Silence. You thanked me, Marcus. You said, my father sacrificed everything so I could chase my dreams. Those were your exact words. That was different. That was before you got successful enough to be embarrassed by where your money came from? I heard him take a shaky breath. Dad, my investors are freaking out. The acquisition team is asking questions about the loan. If this deal falls through, you'll learn what every soldier knows. Actions have consequences. You're talking about $2.8 million. I'm talking about $427,000, Marcus. That's what you owe on the loan. The loan I co-signed, the loan that's due in, I checked my watch. 58 hours. Where am I supposed to get that kind of money? I don't know, son. Maybe ask Catherine's parents. I hear they understand business. The line went quiet for a long moment. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was different, colder. Dad, you're not thinking clearly. Maybe you should talk to someone. The VA has counselors for people with your condition. My condition. There it was again. You know what, Marcus? You're right. I should talk to someone. In fact, I already have. Sarah Chen was very interested in my condition. So was Mike Torres from Stars and Stripes. They both wanted to know how a Purple Heart recipient's son could call his father's war injuries embarrassing. Dad, stop. Please. Funny thing about journalists, Marcus, they love human interest stories, especially stories about successful young men who forget where they came from. I hung up and immediately called the equipment leasing company that held the title to Marcus's servers and development hardware. Pacific Equipment Leasing, this is Robert. Robert, this is Thomas Richardson. I'm the guarantor on lease number. I read the number from my documents, and I need to understand my rights if the lessee defaults on the underlying loan. Sir, if the business loan goes into default, we have the right to repossess all leased equipment immediately. And how long does repossession typically take? 24 to 48 hours once we receive notice of default. Perfect. Marcus had 58 hours to pay the loan, or 48 hours to lose every piece of equipment his company depended on. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Richardson, this is Bradley Chen, Marcus's attorney. We need to discuss this situation immediately. I typed back. Discuss what? Math? Then I drove to the VA office to pick up copies of my complete service record. If this was going to be a war, I was going to make sure I had all the ammunition I needed. After all, I'd been trained by the best army in the world. Marcus was about to learn what happens when you go to war with a master sergeant. Marcus showed up at my apartment at 7 p.m. I heard his Tesla pull into the parking lot. That distinctive electric hum, followed by a car door, slamming harder than necessary. He was upset. I opened the door before he could knock. He looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his Stanford hoodie wrinkled like he'd slept in it. His eyes were red-rimmed, whether from stress or tears, I couldn't tell. Dad, we need to talk. Come in. He stepped into my small living room and immediately saw the empty shadow box on my kitchen table. His face crumpled slightly, the way it used to when he was 8 years old and knew he was in trouble. Dad, you're destroying my life over Christmas dinner? Sit down, Marcus. He perched on the edge of my couch, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. The CNN story has 3 million views already. 3 million. My investors are asking questions I can't answer. What kind of questions? They want to know if the business was built on charity. They want to know if I can actually run a company without my father's money. They want to know why I would humiliate a Purple Heart recipient on national television. I sat down across from him in my recliner, the same chair I'd bought used when he was in high school. And what did you tell them? I told them it was a misunderstanding. I told them you were having an episode and misinterpreted what I said. There it was again. An episode. Marcus, do you know what PTSD actually is? He looked up, surprised by the question. It's trauma. From combat. It's post-traumatic stress disorder. Some veterans have flashbacks, nightmares, anxiety attacks. Some can't function in crowds or handle loud noises. Some can't hold jobs or maintain relationships. I leaned forward. Now tell me, son, which of those symptoms have you ever seen me display? He was quiet for a long moment. Dad, you have nightmares sometimes. Once every few months, maybe, usually around the anniversary of my injury. That's not PTSD, Marcus. That's called being human. But you said, I never said I had PTSD. You assumed I did because it was convenient. It gave you an excuse to be ashamed of your father without admitting you were actually ashamed of being poor. Marcus stood up and started pacing my small living room. This isn't about money, Dad. It's about fit. Catherine's family moves in different circles. They wouldn't understand. Wouldn't understand what? That some families sacrifice for each other instead of just writing checks? That's not fair. I pulled out the bank foreclosure notice that had arrived that afternoon. You want to talk about fair? This is a foreclosure warning on your equipment loan. You have 36 hours to cure the default or lose everything. His face went white. Dad, please. I'll pay you back every penny, with interest. 10%, 15%, whatever you want. When? After the acquisition closes. 2 weeks, maybe 3. And if the acquisition doesn't close because your equipment gets repossessed tomorrow? It won't. It can't. Dad, this deal is my whole future. I stood up and walked to my kitchen table, where all my documents were spread out like battle plans. Marcus, your war stories don't matter anymore. Remember saying that? I was upset. I didn't mean... You meant every word. I picked up the Purple Heart receipt. This medal represented 24 months in a desert, 3 surgeries, and 2 years of physical therapy. I sold it for $15,000 so you could chase your dreams. Marcus was crying now, real tears streaming down his face. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, son. Respect does. And respect isn't something you can promise in a moment of panic. It's something you demonstrate every single day. What do you want me to do? I looked at my son, this successful, brilliant, broken young man who'd forgotten the difference between achievement and character. I want you to understand that honor isn't inherited, Marcus. It's earned and lost. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, earned back. He left 10 minutes later, no closer to a solution than when he'd arrived. But for the first time in months, I felt like I'd spoken to my son instead of his public relations team. By 8 a.m. the next morning, Marcus had launched his counteroffensive. I discovered it when my neighbor, Mrs. Chen No, relation to the CNN reporter, knocked on my door holding her tablet. Tom, you need to see this. That boy of yours is saying some terrible things. She showed me Marcus's LinkedIn post, published at 6:47 a.m. Yesterday, my father appeared on CNN to discuss our family's private struggles with his PTSD and related mental health challenges. While I deeply respect his military service and sacrifice, I'm concerned about his recent episodes and erratic behavior. Our family is seeking professional help to support his transition and healing. I ask for privacy during this difficult time. #veteran support. Mental health awareness. #family first. The post had 847 likes and 312 comments in 90 minutes. I scrolled through them. So brave of you to speak openly about family mental health struggles. PTSD is no joke. Your father needs help, not a platform. This explains the CNN interview. Classic veteran meltdown. But not all the comments supported Marcus. Buried in the thread, I found pushback. Wait, didn't he fund your startup with his disability money? Something feels off about this story. Why would CNN interview someone having a mental health episode? I called Sarah Chen immediately. Tom, I just saw the LinkedIn post. How are you holding up? I'm fine, Sarah, but Marcus is trying to control the narrative by claiming I'm mentally unstable. I figured he might do something like this. I've got good news and bad news. The good news is that Stars and Stripes wants to do a full feature story. The bad news is that Marcus's PR firm is shopping a counterstory to other networks. What kind of counterstory? Troubled veteran threatens son's livelihood. They're painting you as an unstable father who can't accept his son's success. I felt my jaw clench. And the media is buying that? Some outlets are. But here's the thing, Tom. I've been a military correspondent for 8 years. I know the difference between a veteran having a breakdown and a veteran who's been disrespected. Your interview was clear, coherent, and backed up with documentation. So what's our next move? I'm working on getting you an interview with 60 Minutes. But in the meantime, Marcus's people are being aggressive. They've sent a cease and desist letter demanding you stop making public statements about your private family business. I almost laughed. They want me to stop talking about my own money? It gets worse. They're claiming that your Purple Heart sale was evidence of impaired judgment and that your family has been concerned about your mental state for months. After I hung up with Sarah, I sat in my kitchen staring at Marcus's LinkedIn post. 593 likes now. The comments were getting uglier. This veteran is clearly unhinged. Someone should call the VA crisis line. Feel bad for the son having to deal with this publicly. But then I noticed something interesting. Several comments had been deleted. I could see the gaps in the conversation thread where responses had been removed. Marcus was curating the discussion, eliminating anything that didn't support his narrative. My phone rang. Mike Torres from Stars and Stripes. Sergeant Richardson, I've been following this story. I want you to know that we're not buying the mental health angle. Why not? Because I've interviewed hundreds of combat veterans, and you don't present like someone having psychological episodes. You present like someone who's pissed off and has receipts. I smiled. That's a pretty accurate assessment. Here's what I'm thinking. Marcus is trying to make this about your mental health, but the real story is about family financial exploitation. I want to run the numbers exactly how much of your disability money funded his business. Every penny of it. $380,000 in disability payments, $15,000 from the Purple Heart sale, plus I co-signed his $450,000 equipment loan. Jesus, that's $845,000 total. And his startup was just acquired for $2.8 million. So he leveraged your sacrifice into millions, then called you too damaged to attend Christmas dinner. That's about the size of it. Tom, this isn't a mental health story. This is a story about ingratitude and exploitation. Can you meet me this afternoon? I want to photograph your empty shadow box, your bank statements, everything. Absolutely. After Mike hung up, I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't done in years. I created a Facebook account. If Marcus wanted to play the social media game, I'd play it too. My first post was simple. My name is Tom Richardson. I'm a Purple Heart recipient who sold his medal and gave his entire disability check to fund his son's startup. Yesterday, my son told his business partners that my PTSD makes people uncomfortable. Today, he's claiming I'm mentally unstable for objecting to that treatment. Judge for yourself who's telling the truth. I attached a photo of my empty shadow box and the bank statements showing 8 years of transfers to Marcus. Within 2 hours, the post had been shared 600 times. The war for public opinion had officially begun. By noon, my Facebook post had been shared over 2,000 times, and my friend requests were climbing by the minute. Veterans groups across the country were reposting my story with comments like, "This is what happens when we sacrifice everything for our kids," and every parent should read this. But I knew social media momentum was fragile. If I was going to win this war, I needed bulletproof documentation. I spread every piece of paper I owned across my kitchen table and started building my case like we used to build intelligence reports in Iraq, methodical, cross-referenced, and irrefutable. First, the financial trail. I arranged 8 years of bank statements in chronological order, highlighting every transfer to Marcus in yellow. The pattern was unmistakable. $4,750 came in from the VA on the 3rd of every month, and $4,750 went out to Marcus within 48 hours, for 8 years straight. Next to the statements, I placed the Purple Heart sale receipt from Heritage Military Collectibles in Sacramento, dated March 15th, 2018, exactly 3 years after I'd earned it in Fallujah. $15,000 for a medal that was supposed to be priceless. Then came the loan documents. $450,000 in equipment financing from First National Business Credit. Marcus Richardson, primary borrower. Thomas Richardson, guarantor. My signature right next to his, committing me to pay if he defaulted. I photographed everything with my phone, creating a digital archive that couldn't be lost or destroyed. But the most damaging evidence was the recorded phone call. I'd transferred it to my laptop and cleaned up the audio quality. Every word was crystal clear, including the moment Marcus said PTSD makes people uncomfortable and the laughter from his team afterward. My phone rang. Sarah Chen again. Tom, we need to talk. 60 Minutes is interested, but they want to verify all your documentation independently. What do they need? Bank records, military service files, medical records proving your injuries, and most importantly, they want to authenticate that recording. The recording is real, Sarah. I believe you, but 60 Minutes has to be bulletproof. They're sending a technical expert to analyze the audio file. Can you meet with him tomorrow? Of course. There's something else. Marcus hired Keller and Associates. I recognized the name. They were the PR crisis firm that handled scandals for tech executives and politicians. Expensive, ruthless, and very good at destroying reputations. What are they saying? They're pushing the narrative that you've been mentally unstable since your discharge, that your family has been concerned for years, and that the CNN interview was a cry for help rather than a legitimate grievance. Based on what evidence? That's the thing, Tom. They don't need evidence. They just need doubt. If they can make people question your mental state, your story becomes troubled veteran makes wild accusations instead of son betrays father. After Sarah hung up, I called the VA office in San Jose. Veterans Affairs, this is Monica. Monica, this is Tom Richardson. I need copies of my complete medical file and psychological evaluation records. Any particular reason, Mr. Richardson? Someone is claiming I have severe PTSD and mental health issues. I need documentation proving that's false. I can have those ready tomorrow morning? Perfect. Next, I called my former commanding officer, Colonel James Mitchell, now retired and living in Colorado. Tom Richardson. How the hell are you, Sergeant? I've been better, sir. I need a favor. I explained the situation. Mitchell listened without interrupting, then said exactly what I'd hoped he'd say. That's horseshit, Tom. You were one of the most level-headed NCOs I ever served with. Even after the IED incident, you never showed signs of psychological instability. Sir, would you be willing to speak to a reporter about my mental state during and after my service? Absolutely. Give me the contact information. My final call was to Dr. Patricia Williams, the VA psychologist who'd evaluated me during my medical retirement process. Dr. Williams, this is Tom Richardson. You evaluated me in 2006 after my injury in Iraq. I remember you, Tom. How are you doing? Someone is claiming I have severe PTSD and making it sound like I'm mentally unstable. I need to know what your official evaluation says. Let me pull your file. I heard papers rustling. According to my notes, you showed mild adjustment difficulties typical of combat veterans, but no signs of PTSD, depression, or other psychological disorders. Your psychological evaluation was within normal limits. Would you be willing to provide that assessment to a journalist? If you sign a release form, absolutely. By evening, I had assembled what any military intelligence officer would call an airtight case. 8 years of financial records proving every claim. Audio recording of Marcus's statements, ready for technical verification. Medical records proving my injuries were real, but my mental health was sound. Character witnesses from my commanding officer and VA psychologist. Documentation of Marcus's business success built on my sacrifice. But I had one more piece of evidence that Marcus didn't know about. I opened my email and found the message I'd been saving for 6 months. A long, rambling email Marcus had sent me last 4th of July when he'd had too much to drink at a company barbecue. The subject line read, "Thank you for everything, Dad." In it, Marcus had written, "I know I don't say it enough, but everything I have is because of your sacrifice. The Purple Heart money, your disability checks, even co-signing my loans. You've given me opportunities most people never get. I promise I'll make you proud and never let you forget how much I appreciate everything you've done." I forwarded the email to Sarah Chen with a note. Evidence of his true feelings before success went to his head. Marcus wanted to make this about my mental health? Game on, son. The call came at 6:23 a.m. on Friday morning. Sarah Chen, and she was practically vibrating with excitement. Tom, it's happening. Marcus agreed to a live CNN interview to defend himself against your false accusations. They want you both on camera at the same time. I sat up in bed, immediately awake. When? Tonight, 7 p.m. Pacific, live on Anderson Cooper 360. It'll be you, Marcus, and Anderson mediating. 30 million viewers. Minimum. And Marcus agreed to this? His PR team thinks they can control the narrative if he faces you directly. They're betting that you'll have an episode on live television and prove their point about your mental state. I smiled. They're about to learn why you never ambush a master sergeant. Tom, this is huge. This is your chance to tell the whole story, unfiltered, to a massive audience. But it's also dangerous. If Marcus's team can make you look unstable, they can't, because I'm not. I spent the morning at the VA office collecting my complete medical file, then drove to CNN's San Francisco bureau for technical prep. The audio expert they'd brought in was a serious woman named Dr. Rachel Kim, who specialized in voice analysis and audio authentication. Mr. Richardson, I've analyzed your recording. It's completely authentic. No signs of editing, splicing, or digital manipulation. The voice patterns match samples we obtained from Marcus's previous interviews. So it's admissible? It's bulletproof. We can play it on air with complete confidence. Sarah walked me through the interview format. Anderson will start with your story, then bring Marcus on to respond. You'll both be on screen together for the final segment. Remember, stay calm, stick to facts, let your evidence speak for itself. Copy that. One more thing. Marcus's team leaked something to the press an hour ago. She handed me a printout. They're claiming you threatened to destroy Marcus's life, and that you've been stalking his office and investors. I read the statement from Keller and Associates. Mr. Tom Richardson has been engaging in increasingly erratic behavior, including threats against his son's business, harassment of investors, and attempts to sabotage a legitimate corporate acquisition. The family is seeking a restraining order to protect Marcus and his colleagues from further harassment. They filed a restraining order? They tried. The judge denied it after reviewing the evidence. Turns out calling a loan you co-signed isn't harassment. It's a legal right. At 6:45 p.m., I was sitting in the CNN studio, a small microphone clipped to my collar, watching Marcus pace in the green room through a monitor. He was wearing his best suit and had a team of 3 people around him. Lawyers, PR specialists, coaches preparing him for battle. I was alone except for Sarah, who gave me one final piece of advice. Remember, 30 million people are watching. This isn't just about you and Marcus anymore. This is about every veteran who's been disrespected by their own family. Anderson Cooper's voice came through my earpiece. Good evening, I'm Anderson Cooper. Tonight, a story that's captured national attention. A Purple Heart recipient who says his son used his disability compensation to build a multi-million-dollar business, then called him too damaged to attend Christmas dinner. The red camera light came on. With me now is Tom Richardson, the veteran at the center of this controversy. Tom, tell us exactly what happened. For the next 12 minutes, I laid out my case. The financial records, the Purple Heart sale, the 8 years of disability payments that funded Marcus's dreams. Anderson's questions were sharp but fair, and I answered each one with specific numbers and dates. Now, your son claims you're having psychological episodes and that this interview is evidence of mental instability. How do you respond? Anderson, I brought documentation. I held up the VA psychological evaluation. This is my official mental health assessment from the Veterans Administration. Quote, patient shows no signs of PTSD, depression, or psychological disorders. Mental status within normal limits. End quote. Anderson studied the document on camera. This contradicts your son's claims about your mental health. Yes, it does. We should note that CNN has independently verified all of Mr. Richardson's financial documents and military records. Now let's bring in Marcus Richardson, the son in question. Marcus appeared on screen looking polished and confident. His media training showed immediately good posture, direct eye contact with the camera, calm voice. Marcus, your father claims he funded your entire business with his disability money, and you rejected him for Christmas because his PTSD would make guests uncomfortable. True or false? Anderson, my father has been struggling with mental health issues since his discharge. Our family has been trying to get him help, but he's refused treatment. The CNN interview was a cry for help, not a legitimate grievance. But did you or did you not tell your business team that his PTSD makes people uncomfortable? Marcus hesitated for just a moment. That conversation has been taken completely out of context. Actually, Anderson said, we have the audio recording. Let's listen. They played the entire conversation. Marcus's voice, crystal clear. You know how you get sometimes. The nightmares, the episodes. PTSD makes people uncomfortable. Then the laughter from his team. Marcus's face went pale as his own words filled 30 million homes across America. Marcus, Anderson continued, that seems pretty clear. You specifically said your father's PTSD makes people uncomfortable. That was a private family conversation that was recorded without my consent. Are you denying you said those words? No, and is it true that your father funded your startup with nearly $400,000 of his disability compensation? He made some contributions to help me get started, yes. Some contributions. According to the bank records CNN has reviewed, he transferred his entire monthly disability check to you for 8 years. That's not some contributions, Marcus. That's total financial support. I watched Marcus realize his careful PR strategy was crumbling in real time. Now, Anderson said, we're bringing both father and son together for the final segment. The split screen changed, and suddenly Marcus and I were both on camera. For the first time in 3 days, we were looking at each other again. Tom, Anderson said, you're both here now. What do you want to say to your son? I looked directly at Marcus, ignoring the cameras. Son, do you remember what you said when I told you I was selling my Purple Heart? Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. I said I couldn't let you do it. And what did I tell you? You said I was your legacy. That's right. You were my legacy. The proof that my sacrifice meant something. But legacy isn't just about what you build, Marcus. It's about how you honor what came before you. Tears were forming in Marcus's eyes. Dad, I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough anymore, son. Respect is. And respect isn't something you can promise in a moment of panic on national television. It's something you demonstrate every single day. Anderson leaned forward. Marcus, your father gave up everything for your success. What do you say to that? Marcus broke down completely. I was ashamed. Catherine's family, they have so much money, and I didn't want them to know my dad lived in a tiny apartment and worked as a janitor after he got hurt. I wanted them to think I came from their world. So you erased your father from your success story? Yes, and I hate myself for it. The studio was dead silent. Marcus was crying on live television, and 30 million people were watching a son realize he'd betrayed the man who'd sacrificed everything for him. Tom, Anderson said, what happens now? I looked at my son, this broken, successful, lost young man who'd forgotten the difference between achievement and character. Now Marcus learns what every soldier knows. Honor isn't inherited. It's earned daily. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get a chance to earn it back. The show ended with Marcus sobbing on national television and me sitting quietly, my empty shadow box visible on the table between us. By morning, the video had 23 million views, and Marcus's acquisition deal was officially dead. Justice served. 6 months later, Marcus knocked on my door at exactly 6 p.m. on a Sunday evening. He'd been doing this every week since the CNN interview, same time, same day, never missing once. Hey, Dad. Come in, son. He looked different now, thinner, older somehow, but cleaner around the eyes. The kind of clean that comes from sleeping without guilt. Marcus had lost everything in the weeks following our television showdown. The acquisition deal collapsed within 24 hours. Investors don't like buying companies built on family drama and public humiliation. His startup sold 3 months later for $400,000, barely enough to cover debts and employee severance. He now worked as a senior developer at a mid-sized tech firm in San Jose, making $85,000 a year. Good money, honest money, money he earned without anyone's disability checks or Purple Heart sales. I brought dinner, he said, holding up a bag from the Chinese place down the street. Orange chicken like Mom used to make. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where my empty shadow box used to sit. The shadow box was gone now. I donated it to the local VFW hall, where it held a flag folded for another veteran's family. "How's the new apartment?" I asked. "Good. Small, but good. 800 square feet in Fremont. Catherine helped me move." Catherine had surprised everyone by standing by Marcus through the collapse. Turned out the old money princess had more character than her tech boy fiancé. She'd called me 2 weeks after the CNN interview to apologize and invite me to their wedding. "Dad, I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "I want to pay you back. Not just the money. I know that'll take years. But the respect. I want to earn back the right to call you my father." I looked at this man, my son, who'd learned the hardest lesson any person can learn, that success without honor is just expensive failure. "You're paying me back already, Marcus. $500 a month toward the debt, phone calls every Sunday, and you haven't missed a Veterans Day in 6 months. It's not enough. It's a start." We finished dinner in comfortable silence. When Marcus got up to leave, he paused at the door. "Dad?" "Yes?" "Thank you for your service." He said it without prompting, without cameras, without anyone to impress. Just a son honoring his father. Copy that, son. Some battles end with surrender. The best ones end with understanding.